26 million Americans, that's 1 in 9 adults, have kidney disease, and 90% don't even know it. It is responsible for more deaths each year than breast cancer or prostate cancer. We not giving up, we gon' win. We are warriors, champions. We not giving up, we gon' win. We are warriors, champions. 1 in 9, do you know? 1 in 9.
Welcome to the 1 in 9 Tribe podcast, the show that brings awareness, prevention, and solutions to people who want to better their health. I'm your host, Analyn Scott, and today we're coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina, with this dynamic group, and we're going to have a fantastic conversation about kidney disease awareness, prevention, but also with it being April, kidney disease, April is Organ Donation Month, and so we want to really share some special highlights around that. But kidney disease is so much more than just transplants and dialysis, and that's really what this discussion is going to be about. We're going to talk about individuals, we're going to talk about their families, and the impact that kidney disease has on our communities, both here in the U.S. and worldwide. So starting here, since we're here in Charlotte, I'm going to turn to my right, and we're just going to go through today, and I just really want this to be a natural, organic conversation. We're all friends here, and I think we're going to be able to really enlighten the audience today. Some may be coming thinking that they know quite a bit, maybe they have family members. Others, maybe they really don't have much awareness at all, but when they leave here, they're going to definitely know a lot more. And so I think that's a great starting point, Shellisa, because in your story with you and your husband, Tim, neither one of you really had any clue about kidney disease when his kidneys failed, correct?
Yes, so just a little bit of backstory. This is actually his second transplant that we participate. So we knew about kidney disease in that he had already experienced it before, but he was the first in his family that had dealt with kidney disease. So in the beginning, he definitely didn't even know what was going on. He was sick, he just thought, virus or something like that, not understanding that something was going on inside of his body. And so he was getting sicker, not being able to hold food on his stomach, things like that. And then traveling for work, and went to the doctor to say, I need something for my stomach, and not going home because he was in that dire strait for his illness. And they're like, no, it's not like your kidneys, you're in kidney failure. Like, okay, well, I'll get some medicine for that and go home. Like, no, like, you're gonna be here for a while. And so for him, that was his first exposure, and so had never knew anything about. He had undiagnosed high blood pressure, was not aware of that, and so it was just kind of continuing on with life, eating poorly, all those types of things, and really had no idea what was happening, and that his kidneys were in failure and what that would mean. And so our first exposure to it when we got married, just 2 months after we were married, is when we found out that first kidney was beginning to fail. And so then that was my introduction into what that was going to be like and what that would feel like for almost 10 years after that.
Wow. Well, and I know you guys have gone through many twists and turns, which we'll definitely be able to cover in this discussion.
Yes.
And I purposefully had you seated here next to Reverend Antonio Smith and his dear wife, Pam Smith, who not only just celebrated a wedding anniversary, but also a kidney anniversary. So can you share more with us about that?
Right, we just celebrated 36 years of marriage, 36 wonderful years of marriage, as well as 9 years since Antonio had to go in with his kidneys failing him. We had our transplant, and I like to say that I didn't have anything else to do that day, so I donated my kidney to him, one of my kidneys to him.
Aww.
And we're going 9 years strong, so I'll let him share kind of what led up to that.
Prior to that, I was an athlete playing football and eating whatever I wanted to eat. It was after I stopped being so active and continued to eat the wrong foods. Diabetes, which runs in my family, caught up with me. At the age of 51, I went into the doctor's office and he said, you got two choices. Either get a kidney transplant or be on dialysis the rest of your life. Of course, I was not going to be on dialysis the rest of my life because I saw what it did to my grandmother. Like I say, diabetes runs in our family. So I started preparing for a kidney transplant. Matter of fact, I told the doctor I was going to either be the first one kidneys reversed or got better, or the Lord had a kidney with my name on it. Mm-hmm. I walk by faith and not by sight. And my ministry, pastoring and preaching, really kicked in. I never doubted it. Right after we left the doctor's office, sitting in the car, of course, crying, Pam said to me, if I'm a match, I'll gladly give you one of my kidneys. So it took us about 2 years of dialysis to get strong enough, and I never forget it. I had registered for school, getting my master's. It was probably the worst day I had through the whole process. And she called, she said, honey, I'm not just a match, I'm a perfect match. I said, oh, that's good. I wanted to pull over on W.T. Harris and shout. And, you know, the doctor told us that they would pick a date for us. We had to come in at a certain time once they called us. We didn't experience any of that. We were able to pick our own day, which was March 27th. Like I said, we just got through celebrating 9 years of perfect health with the kidney that she gave me, and the rest was history. I must say that I was blessed. I was very blessed because I went from the recovery room to my regular room. 8 o'clock that next morning, I was sitting on the side of the bed, and the doctor came in and said, well, as soon as I placed her kidney tubes on your tubes, your kidneys immediately start functioning. And he said that out of all the kidney surgeries he's done, transplants he's done, mine was the most healthiest and the prettiest kidney he ever seen, ever witnessed. And I've been the beneficiary of that. And been going strong. It led us to start an organization, Smith Bios Group, now where we literally go around the country educating people on the danger of diabetes and high blood pressure. And we also partnered with the National Kidney Foundation. So after we do our workshop, they come in and do kidney screenings. And it has not been one kidney screening that we've had done that a person didn't find out that they had kidney failure. And another thing I found out that you can really detect it at an early stage, but most doctors wait till your 4th stage, which is too late.
Right.
You know, they would tell you during the 1st stage or the 2nd stage, you got a chance of reversing and getting better. So glad to do what we're doing. It's a calling. We'll do it throughout life, and we will travel.
Right.
We will travel.
Right. Yeah, because the word needs to get out.
Yes.
Because you're absolutely right. People don't understand, and they're finding out so much later, like, as you know, with my husband Raymond, to find out 24 years ago at the age of 29, thinking his cough was just bronchitis, and then learning that his blood pressure was sky high, and that his kidneys had failed, and that he needed to start dialysis that night. He didn't even know what dialysis was. And we're seeing that so often now, and people are finding out stage 4, stage 5. Like you said, if they could find out at earlier stages, 1, 2, 3, and then the fact that there's so many people that don't even know that high blood pressure, that diabetes and high blood pressure being the 2 highest causes.
They're the leading causes.
They're the leading causes for it, like responsible for more than 2/3 of kidney disease and kidney failure.
Diabetes is the #1 cause. High blood pressure is the #2 cause. And 9 times out of 10, once your kidneys start failing you, like with me, I had no high blood pressure problems. But once my kidneys started failing me, I had high blood pressure. And another thing I would like to point out, a lot of people living in the South, especially, have both high blood pressure and diabetes. And if they continue to eat the wrong foods, don't exercise, it will catch up with you.
Right. Well, because right now they're talking about statistics that it's 1 in 3 American adults are at risk for having kidney disease in their lifetime. And I think, that's certainly shocking to me. And being here in Charlotte, there's definitely here in the South, like you said, there's a higher rate, especially within the African American community, between 3.5 to 4 times more likely to have kidney disease. And so we were here for this conference, this International Leadership Summit, and we were able to meet some folks. And so I want to turn here to my left and speak with Denika, because Denika is someone that was sitting with us. We had a chance to talk earlier today, and she was sharing that, as we were talking about kidney disease, she goes, oh, well, I know somebody. But let's talk a little bit about, Denika, what did you know just from some experience with your neighbor, and then we'll kind of touch on some of the things that you know what, I'm going to flip that. Let's flip it to what you didn't know, because what we were just talking about here, about diabetes and high blood pressure, when I mentioned to you that those were the 2 leading causes, you had this look of shock. And it really caught you off guard. Can you explain kind of why and a little bit more about your history?
Sure. It was really shocking to me because I didn't know that they had a correlation at all. I was like, well, why is that? Or, I remember a point in my life where I was a lot heavier, and I had type 2 diabetes. And I also, I had the type 2 diabetes and the high blood pressure. It was years and years ago, but I remember my doctor telling me, hey, if you don't, lose the weight, this is going to be bad for your health. So I did. I lost the weight, and when I lost the weight, the blood pressure went down. I was at the point where I was taking insulin twice a day, just from my weight. And once I lost the weight, that all went away as well. But not only that, I had remembered about 13 years ago, I had twins, and they were babies, and I had a neighbor. And she was a really sweet lady, and I remember the dialysis truck used to come and pick her up to take her, and we would chat with her, chat with her all the time. She was very sweet. And I remember one day the ambulance coming, and they went into her home and took her, and she never came back. So she had passed away in her home, and her husband was there, and he was just left looking lost. And I won't ever forget the way that his face looked, and the way that they wheeled her out with the, I knew she had already passed away because her face was covered. And as a neighbor, watching another neighbor that you spoke to, you went across and you talked to them all the time, and they were just, I felt like there was a loss in my family. So that was something that really kind of touched me, and I remembered that. And when you were speaking to me about what you guys did, I was like, that came up to my mind immediately. Not even me, not even, having the type 2 diabetes at that time, or having the high blood pressure, because I had no idea that there was any correlation between any of that. And when you mentioned that correlation, I was completely in shock. I was like, what? So that was just really interesting to me, and it really opened up my eyes to the knowledge of what knowing could really do to someone, and help them in their lives, to overcome. So
we need to get those conversations going more,
right.
Even with neighbors, friends, families, really talking about it. And Tony, you were talking about the screenings, and I wanted to touch on that too, because we just did with 1 in 9, we had a health screening. We did a big kidney disease awareness event in Phoenix, and brought the community together, and had, we're talking about awareness, but we also partnered with the group Twin Epidemic, who we had doctors, we had like over 50 people that came to help volunteer, did a full health screening. And so people were able to do a cardio-renal metabolic screening. And so people were able to look at their blood sugars to kind of see what that was. And we had 50 people that were able to come through the screening. And they were so enlightened. They were just really appreciative to have the knowledge, to have the information. But there were a few people that came through that screening that have known us for a while. They were there to support us. And they went through the screening and actually found that they were at different levels of kidney disease and didn't know it.
Right. The first time we did a kidney screening was at the Georgia State Baptist Convention in Macon, Georgia. And that was a minister, preacher in the crowd who heard our speech, and he decided to go get his kidneys checked. He'd go through the screening. Lo and behold, he was at stage 5.
Wow.
And we had to call an ambulance and immediately rush him to the hospital. The last time, before COVID hit, we did a kidney screening. It was in Atlanta. There was a guy who had been diagnosed with blood pressure problems, and he had been telling me the problems that he was having. I said, you really need to go upstairs and go through the screening. Lo and behold, he was at stage 4. And he left the convention immediately and went home. It is, high blood pressure is a silent killer. And diabetes is a silent killer. It's very rapid in the South, especially a state like Georgia. I'm from Georgia, where they spend over $2 billion a year dealing with diabetes. Georgia is above the national average for kidney failure, and a lot of it's due to diabetes. Here in North Carolina, you have about 1 million people diagnosed with diabetes. Check this out, 2 million are pre-diabetic.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So, and it's not getting better. It's not getting better. And you ask why? It's a simple solution. Eat properly and exercise. Down south, people love fried foods. Well, I love it too, but it didn't love me, so I had to divorce it. We eat a lot of starchy food in our diets. So those are the main reasons. And then we chase it with sweet tea.
Sweet tea, right?
Cokes, Pepsis, Mountain Dews. And if you do the research on it and look on the bottle and read the labels, you will see the amount of sugar that it has. And we always tell people in our workshops, and matter of fact, we go through a process in our nutrition, teaching people how to read labels. Salt is one of the main reasons people suffer with high blood pressure. It's one of the main reasons. You don't realize how much salt is in the food.
It's in everything.
Yeah, and then you go and season it, put even more salt on it. And have you ever noticed a person, before they even taste their food, they're getting the salt shaker? And it is, and I hate to be dramatic, but I tell them, you're killing yourself. You're killing yourself. And when your body starts talking to you, you ignore it. And I say to all people, your body will talk to you. It's up to you to listen. You know, and we say this in our workshop, if it is to be, it's up to me. You know.
Absolutely.
You know, I want to mention one other thing as far as when he's talking about the eating poorly that he did for years, and in hindsight, you know, after our transplant and all, I thought about the fact that it's really a family affair. It's really a family affair, and that's kind of how we tackled it at one point. I thought about all those years we were married, but it's kind of like, well, I knew he had type 2 diabetes, but I'm like, okay, he's grown. He knows what he should be eating and shouldn't be eating. But then as a person that loves him and cares for him, I just try to encourage people now, you know, look at the family, you know, have those conversations. And, you know, sometimes that tough love, it's needed. I think it's needed more in families, to say to that mom or that dad, that sibling or whomever, that grandparent, okay, look at what you're eating, and you're going to the doctor a lot, and this is something, especially if it's something that's maybe not genetic or what have you, something that you do have the power in your hands and in your abilities to at least dial it back some in your life. And so I think it's very important.
What she's done for me, and it's been a blessing, she serves me portion sizes.
Yeah.
And I will tell everyone, eat portion sizes. I used to love Golden Corrals. I don't even go there now. And when you go there, you see people eating mountains of food, just piling it up on you, not knowing the risk that you're putting on your body. So what she started doing is serving me portion sizes. My meat is never no bigger than the palm of my hand. And the vegetables, I don't eat about a half a cup of vegetables, and that is filling. I'm full after that.
It's what your body needs.
Yeah, exactly. And water is your best friend. I tell people all the time, I try to drink at least 64 ounces of water a day. But water is your best friend. Drink water.
Yeah.
Drink
They say
water.
I think half your weight in ounces
That's right.
each day. And I know, being in Arizona, I don't have I carry my water with me
Right,
and
right.
travel with it, because you have to stay hydrated. It's very key. But I'm going to switch back over this way, and again, being at this conference, we met so many wonderful people, and this morning when we sat down and we had this conversation this morning, Jennifer, when I shared what we were doing with 1 in 9, and you immediately stopped and said, I want to know more, because kidney disease has affected your family as well. Do you mind sharing that?
Sure. While I was listening to your other wonderful guest over there, I thought I would just only be speaking about my cousin, who has been on dialysis, and who he was about over 500 pounds at one point in time. I know he had his stomach stapled at one point in time. He went through that surgery, but ultimately he succumbed from cardiac arrest. And then 2 years ago, his mother, when she found out that she ended up having to go on dialysis, it was very tough for her because she watched one of her children suffer on dialysis for a very, very long time. And just hear them talk about high blood pressure and diabetes. As you know, as I shared, my father is from Nigeria. He's an immigrant from Nigeria. My mother's family, though, is from South Carolina. And so the family, I didn't tell you which side of the family I was mentioning, but that was on my mother's side. My sister, it's interesting, I'll just speak about my mother a little bit. My mom, 20 years ago, this year makes 21 years, she died at 44, and she had high blood pressure, and she had diabetes. However, according to her autopsy report, her cause of death could not be determined, and the manner of death was cause of death unknown, manner of death could not be determined. And so I ended up taking care of my younger siblings. I ended up getting legal guardianship of them. And my sister at the time, she was 13. She was diagnosed with diabetes at 10 years old.
Wow.
And so by the time I inherited my sister at 13, she was already 300 pounds. And so when he started talking about portion sizes, it just made me remember my sister and going through that, and pediatric endocrinologist and visits to MUSC, which is a hospital in South Carolina in Charleston, and just going through, the whole everything with her. She's already had, what is it called, the cataract surgery, and my sister's in her late 20s. She's gone through a lot, but ultimately, watching family members, and thank God she's still living. They gave her, I remember when I think she was probably 15, 16. They told me she wouldn't live past 19, you know. And I couldn't even get life insurance for her because, you know, they check. And so imagine other African Americans that are suffering and who can't get coverage for their families due to, you know, underlying health issues.
Yeah.
I do. 2 weeks ago, I didn't share with you guys, but 2 weeks ago I was in the hospital, 2 Saturdays ago, due to my doctor assumed I had high blood pressure, due to pregnancy though, due to pregnancy. And so my, the high risk doctor, because I'm 40, so the high risk doctor, so I go to a high risk physician in addition to my OB, and he asked me to go like that day when I was at the doctor's office that Friday, and I'm like, I have things to do. I didn't want to go. So he said, okay, well, if you wake up with a headache and, you know, and your feet are swollen and everything, he said, just go to the hospital. So I did wake up 2 weeks ago, last Saturday, with a headache. So I was in the hospital in Staten Island, New York, and when they checked my blood pressure, they had me on the monitor in the maternity ward, and they had me on the monitor and everything, and they were like, your pressure went down. Whatever you did, it worked. What did you do? And to speak to, as a testament to what they were sharing again, I said, okay, I can't have that burger that I wanted. So I said, no salt for myself, and let me drink some water. And I'd like to add, in terms of the African American community, stress. I decided to redesign how I looked at certain things in my life, because stress is a trigger. And we have to find another way to release, to reflect, you know, and to overcome that. And so, again, I didn't have that burger. I drank some water, and I put my feet up, and I exhaled. So I said, you know, next week will come, but let me just relax, listen to some good music, you know, watch a show, not stress about work, and thank God it did the difference. But I think stress for me was something that was a changer, a game changer for me from Friday to Saturday. So.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that with all of us, because I think other people will be able to relate to that in so many different ways.
And he's right. I was dehydrated, so I had to get, you know, some water.
Not only is stress a problem, but that's one of the leading causes for high blood pressure. And diabetes is the leading cause for blindness, as well as amputations. And I walked in here, but you didn't realize that I had my foot amputated because of the complications I had with diabetes. Watching what you eat is vital. It works. It works. And I tell people in our workshop, those who want to, find a way. Those who don't, find excuses. And when your doctor asks you to go immediately to the hospital, if you felt that way, you probably would have felt better if you would have went right then. We put things off. And I tell people all the time, the life you save may be your very own. And when you hear that you've been diagnosed with diabetes, you ought to take it just as serious as when you've been diagnosed with cancer. Because my sister-in-law, who's a nurse practitioner, when at the age of 23, she was diagnosed with diabetes, and she asked her doctor how should she treat it, and his response was, treat it as if it's a cancer, slowly eating away at your body parts. Now you think about that. And diabetes affects every major organ in your body. Every major organ. So we cannot, when you diagnose, a lot of people, oh, okay, I'll be all right. No, you need to take that serious. Because again, the life you save be your very own.
You're slower to heal.
Very much so.
My mother had diabetes, so of course, growing up, I would see her taking the insulin and that sort of thing. But my sister, like I said, was diagnosed when she was 10. So even with her now, if she gets scraped or a cut, it's going to take forever for that to heal. So much slower to heal, and different things. Even imagine a pediatric endocrinologist. We had to go to Charleston. We lived in Myrtle Beach, but we had to go to Charleston just for her to see a doctor. To see that doctor that would specialize in that. And so I also think economic empowerment in Black and Brown and communities, and communities that are underserved and
Exactly.
underrepresented would be another driving force in helping to reduce stress, right? Because sometimes stress is caused by, economic factors. For instance, I am a single mother, and one of the reasons why I did not go on Friday, I'm gonna be very transparent, is because I'm like, okay, I have my 2 kids in the car. I have to pick up my daughter from the train. My daughter goes to school in Manhattan, my oldest. So I'm like, I got to pick her up from the train. It was like 4 o'clock, I run a nonprofit, and so I'm like, oh, I have a Zoom call later that, just trying to piece all the dots. And to be very honest as well, on Saturday morning before I went to the hospital, I showed my daughter the deeds to the properties. I showed her where my mortgage papers were. I showed her where my life insurance was, because as a teenager, I had to deal with my mother just dying and me not knowing, I had to just look and pray and hope that there was a life insurance policy, and there was, but I knew nothing about it. That's why even with that, and education and empowering and economic empowerment, I know my daughter's used to it, right? At this point, she was raised with no grandmother, but without my mother as a grandmother, she had a surrogate. But I think that adds stress, because I know I was really stressed as a youngster, dealing with that, planning my mother's funeral at 19, taking care of my siblings. I would take my little sister to the dialysis center that my cousin used to go to kind of, how they got that scare program for kids with the prison? So I Scare Straight, yeah. I wanted to kind of scare her into the wanting to take better care of herself. I had to not eat certain food, the portions. She had a dietitian she had to go to every week by the hospital. I mean, it was a lot, in addition to trying to have her stay a youngster and all of that. But in dialysis centers, they smell, they have that stench, and it's very difficult. I can't imagine, it's one thing being a family member of folks that have to do that, but it's something else to have to go through it. And so, I can't imagine that, and then being weak afterwards. I used to see my aunt just suffer, and even my cousin, the one that passed before his mom, just him on that machine. Nowadays, they don't let you go inside in the back anymore, but back in the day, I'm old now. Back in the day, they would let you go, and so I would take my sister, like, come on, we're going, so you can see Randall, and Randall was cool with it, so she could see that and be like, okay, let me do better. Let me take my insulin, let me not get upset with my sister for making me eat this food. Let's walk. Don't be upset with us walking, but there's some underlying factors in terms of stress that I think if we can, support communities of color and people that are disadvantaged, like women and others and children, we can perhaps help that and alleviate some of that pressure that that tends to suck some of the strength out of certain communities.
Right, and you touch on too, the family. It really impacts the family. Whenever there's a chronic disease,
Yes.
whether it's diabetes, high blood sugar, but especially kidney disease, it affects the whole family.
Yes.
And so I applaud you for what you were doing with your sister, on all of it, really stepping up, and at such a young age to help give her a better chance at life. And now empowering your children so that you can change that trajectory within your own family, within your own household, and then speaking out on it to help change it in the community, I think is so important. I know we were actually speaking recently. We did, it was the day after we did our health screening, and we screened our documentary at our church. And there were some people from our church that had been over at the event, and they spoke after the film, and they were just, I mean, really moved and said, you know, we are now going to take charge. Now that we know better, we can do better. And they were empowered to say, okay, they could finally see how it might impact them. And a few people came up to me even afterwards that actually the next week they had gone to their doctor and checked, and were surprised at some of their numbers, and so, but grateful to know that. So I think when we look at that empowerment, you know, number one, we have to be our own biggest advocates,
Yes.
and not rely on just what the doctor is telling you. And then be an advocate for your family members too, because maybe you have information that can help them, so that they don't end up on dialysis in one of those, you know, Raymond was speaking about it, and he said, trust me, you know, when you have a chronic disease like this, when you have kidney failure, it takes a lot of discipline. You have to, your whole diet changes, everything changes. So it's easier, trust me, to be more disciplined now.
Absolutely.
And without having to be forced to be disciplined. So I kind of like that, scared straight. I don't know that they'll let people in yet. And Ashley can probably speak really, you know, more on that, because Ashley, who is an ambassador here with 1 in 9, but she's also been a dialysis technician for the past 10 years. And I know one thing that really linked us together was her passion to say, how is it that so many people are ending up in one of my dialysis chairs and they're angry, they're confused, they don't know how they got there. Many of them didn't even know that they had kidney disease at stage 1, 2, 3, 4. They're finding out at stage 5. And you know, they're having to learn as they're going through this. So I'm sure you can relate to every single story that's going on here, correct?
I can relate to all of these stories. And like you were talking about, Tony, about the complications of diabetes. And if anybody knows me, and knows my story about dialysis, one thing that made me passionate was the suffering of people in the clinic. You know, just the illness that comes with it and the complications, like amputations, you know, circulation problems, sleep problems, not healing well, like you get a cut and you don't heal very well. I mean, there's so many different things, and people don't realize that. Oh, and cataracts, like your eyes, your blindness, I mean, and so these people are dealing with all sorts of different things, and that's what I was just like, man, if I could do something to help, you know, change this, because the people are suffering. And this is even after they've been diagnosed with kidney disease. They're suffering with these complications. So along with kidney disease, you're also going to be suffering with the complications of diabetes, high blood pressure. And you know, I can relate, you know, as being a single mother myself too, and having, you know, those high stress factors in your life. And that's something that we do need to, as a collective, be trying to reduce the stress in our lives, because our health is important.
Yes, it is.
And as family, and having those discussions as family members, and talking about, you know, what we can do to live healthier lives. It is hard. I mean, I've struggled with weight problems myself, you know, and it's not easy. It's not easy making a decision to, you know, there's so many temptations around and things like that, but when we really know the facts and we've seen the things that, and we've seen, the best thing to do is, get that education, start thinking about preventative care, because that's the only way we're going to start changing this. And all of us here, we could just start making better changes and showing other people, let's make a difference.
Absolutely, and clearly, there are other causes of kidney disease. So there's genetic reasons, there's polycystic kidney disease, there's FSGS. Some people are even born with, different abnormalities and have to start out on dialysis, right? So there's many factors, but again, when we look at the leading causes, and that's something that we really can have an impact on. In your clinic specifically, and I know where you're at too, you also, many of your patients are part of, our Native Americans, which are at higher risk, and especially within Gila River, which is #1 tribe for diabetes and high blood pressure. So you're seeing even different family members that are on there, and we've worked with a lot of people too, and there seems to be that thought of, well, it just runs in my family. My mom had it, or my aunt had it, my sister has it. They're just almost waiting, and we want to even have a paradigm shift on that to help empower all communities to know that they can take their health into their hands. What would you say the percentage of your patients suffer from diabetes? Since that's really what we've been talking mostly about, diabetes, would you say would be in your clinic?
I wouldn't know the percentage number, so I wouldn't want to give that, but I would say the majority of the population, either has high blood pressure or diabetes.
It's one or the other.
It's one or the other, or both. And so, and it runs in families, but it is something that we could change, and that's if we can just bring awareness to it and try and make a difference. And I know it's very high in the African American communities, and same with the Native American community, and they suffer from it. And
it is also growing, if I may say, in the Caucasian community.
Yes.
We were blessed to do a speech to an all-white congregation. And we start off every presentation, let me see the hands of those who've been diagnosed with diabetes or high blood pressure, or someone. If there's 20 people in the room, or if there's 2,000, everyone in that room raises their hand. And we've done 2 workshops or speeches with a predominantly white community, and everyone in that room raised their hands. And I tell people, diabetes and high blood pressure has no respect to person. It will get you.
Yes.
My dad has it.
Yeah.
So my dad has diabetes. Thank
It doesn't
goodness.
discriminate.
Does not discriminate.
No.
Does
No,
not.
it does not at all.
And the dialysis machine that's in our family room didn't scare my dad enough. Thank goodness his kidneys are well, because I already told him I'm not dialyzing 2 people at home. I'm already doing Raymond's dialysis treatment. But, jokingly, I'm going to take care of my dad. But really, let's keep your kidneys healthy. So we're very grateful that they are, but it has impacted his eyesight.
Yeah.
He had a stroke a little over a year ago as well. And so those were some of it came to actually him having that stroke for him to say, okay, let me take this a little bit more seriously. And he's doing much, much better. But it shouldn't have to take something dire like that happening. Maybe people can learn from the examples that we're sharing here to see what they may be able to do differently.
Let me add one more cause effect. It affects your oral, your dental.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So, and everything that I've named, you need.
Right.
You really need. And that's why I say, when you've been diagnosed with diabetes, you ought to say, oh, it's like cancer.
Yes.
Yeah.
It can have a
It eats away at your whole body.
Yeah. It eats away your whole body.
Yep.
You're right.
What I thought was really impactful was when Jennifer was talking about the financial impact of this disease, and both the diabetes, the kidney disease, the high blood pressure. I'm within the financial industry, and when she said that her sister couldn't get insurance, I've had many clients that I could not help to make sure that their financial lives were intact, because there wasn't going to be a way to provide for legacy for them in a traditional way with life insurance, which is one of the building blocks of your financial well-being. It has to be a part of that, along with, you know, making sure that you're funding your 401k, or you're funding any other, you know, sources of, you know, your retirement incomes. And I've had to tell people, well, I'm sorry, we can't get you covered. And the way that that impacts a family is tremendous. Not only that, when these family members are sick and they can't go to work, and you know, your FMLA only lasts but so long, you know, then what happens next? What happens then? You know, and just trying to prepare yourself for these types of impacts, and knowing that these things could happen should scare anyone.
It should. And, you know, again, coming out of this leadership conference, right? You know, everyone is looking, whether it be a nonprofit organization, for-profit, or both, which I know you're running both, or 2 or 3. So you're definitely you want to take care of the community. You're taking care of your family. And the importance too to secure your oxygen mask, not only health-wise but financially for everything. And I think that really gets overlooked. Even you know, there's that drive of, okay, we've got to do more, we have to do more. But then we have. I don't think people look at the significance. You might know because you've seen your aunt and your cousin, but once they're on, most people who are on dialysis are on disability. They're not able to work because they don't have the energy. They don't. They have the other health issues where they're not able to, you know, provide for their families the way they once were able to, or even just to have that energy to spend with their kids or to travel.
Right. I have another aunt in New York who, I think she thought she had a leg issue and went to the hospital, and they kept her and then started dialyzing her. And so she's waiting for transplant right now. And she was an RN. She, you know, I was an RN for a number of years, 35, 40 years. And my kids and I went to Puerto Rico last year, and I love traveling, but you know, I wanted her to travel this year with us. I'm like, you want to come, Rhonda? And she's like, and I already looked up, you know, dialysis centers in San Juan, you know, and everything. And I do that even with my aunt that passed. I used to look up dialysis centers, or if I'm riding by, I'm like, oh, there's a dialysis center. Maybe you know, they can travel. But some people are, you know, will travel, but for some, it limits that, right? My aunt didn't come to my daughter's graduation, her middle school graduation, because of dialysis. And, you know, and even when I live in New York, but when I would fly back to South Carolina frequently, my aunt had like 7, 8 kids, and they're like grown, like her grandkids or great-grands are like my age. But when I'm home, they all know, don't y'all pick her up or take her to dialysis. I'm taking her at 5-something in the morning, and I'll be there around, you know, 12 or 11-ish to pick her up. But you know, she's great the day before, but then just seeing your relative not having their strength and can't really enjoy life, you know, with everything that comes with it is really, really tough, you know?
So Denika, you know, like what you had brought up, like the financial issue, and so did you, Jennifer. That is a huge thing, and you know, people don't realize, like when you get on dialysis, you know, the things that could happen, and there is a huge financial impact. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a really good thing. And also with kidney transplant, you had brought that up, and I just kind of wanted to talk about that again. Is you know, people think, when they lose kidney function, okay, well now and I've said this in the last podcast, like about transplant, but it is a wait. It's a wait, and it's a process, and you have to readjust your lifestyle because they're not just going to hand you a kidney if you are not, healthy enough, to receive that kidney.
Or even have the right insurance too.
Exactly,
that too. Having multiple types of insurance, all of those things play such a big factor in that, because of our weight and it being almost 10 years of dialysis, 4 years of peritoneal in the stomach cavity, and then the rest of the years on hemodialysis. It's a big adjustment. Every area of your life is impacted by dialysis, and from the days of treatment and not feeling well to, not being able to work. My husband worked the first 4 years and he just was too sick to continue to work, and the impact that makes on your children. And you and I have talked about that, how your kids are resilient, so they just kind of pick themselves up and they try to go along with it. But it's a lot on your family and trying to, really make ends meet, and wondering if for us it wasn't if, it was when. Like, I believe that God was going to provide a kidney for us. It's like, well, we just going to make sure we're ready when it comes. And so we tried to make sure that we could do all of the things, but it is, it's very stressful, and it's hard after year, and waiting, like, is this going to be the year where we get this? And your loved one their health is deteriorating because you're not made to live on dialysis. And a lot of people think, I know for my husband's family, they didn't have an understanding that this was not a means, like, we weren't on dialysis forever. Like, no, we actually need a kidney. Like, the goal is not to be.
This isn't a cure.
Dialysis is not a cure.
Yes,
That's
but people treat it that way. And
And I think, even in a way, so I'm all about awareness and empowerment, but in a way it was a little bit of a blessing when Raymond's kidneys failed, that we didn't know that the average life expectancy for someone on dialysis is 5 to 10 years.
5 to 10 years.
And so he definitely has surpassed that.
Yes.
And I remember when we first met, when we were on our RV trip in 2017, and our good mutual friend connected us, Denise, and we were there filming actually with you and Tim. And I remember Raymond and Tim sitting on the couch next to each other, and they were just like swapping stories, and there was so much that they could relate to. It almost sounded, there were so many parallels that they had. And I remember, because we were dialyzing Raymond too on the RV as we're traveling. So going back to the traveling options, even with a lot of people don't know that home dialysis is an option. It's so much better on the heart.
Yes, it is.
There's so many benefits to it. It gives more freedom.
Yes.
I did his dialysis treatment Wednesday morning at 3 o'clock in the morning before hopping on a plane to come to Charlotte. And so, and then now he's getting respite care. He was able to have a nurse to go into a center and have that taken care of. And if he would have come with me, we had it arranged that he would have been able to do it here. Or we could travel with the machine if we want. So there are different options. So I remember then they were talking because, again, Tim was still on dialysis, and you had been, and we all were praying for him to get a transplant. And I would love for you to share a little bit. And I know the story is also in our 1 in 9 Tribe book. But it really took a lot of prayer. And can you share a little bit? Because I think that is, your story is just so touching.
Absolutely. So you're right. It was a lot of prayer. And like I was sharing earlier, it was never if he was going to get a kidney. Like, we believe for God to do this. And like when he's ready, we're going to be ready. But it was a long time. It was a long time of dialysis, a lot of challenges that went into that. But during our wait, we would just continue to live life. So we did travel. We'd take our machine with us, and try to get as much life as we could. We had different health challenges. Tim had a heart attack when our daughter was a baby. It was just lots of different challenges over the years, and having to have different sites for his treatment, moving his graft and things like that all over. But the last year, I was sharing with you both that we did get a call for a kidney, and we ended up not getting that kidney, and it was just a devastating experience because we were so hopeful that was our moment. and we got disqualified because they didn't think my husband's heart would be strong enough for transplant surgery. And so we went to another hospital, and they, worked with us. And a year later, we got that call. So it was the 4th of July, and my husband had been very sick the weekend prior. Like, I'd never seen him that sick before, never had to call an ambulance for him before. It was really dire. And my kids were, very upset because it was just that severe. We just weren't sure. But they went to go visit family. I'm very grateful for all of the support from them over the years. But on the 4th of July, we were together, like, let's just make the best of today. He's home from the hospital. We're going to have a great day. It's going to be a great day. And so we went to have smoothies at a place, and they had a prayer jar. And so I wrote a note on there, like, waiting for a kidney. It's been almost 10 years. And we put that note in the prayer jar, went about our day, we barbecued. And so we were just relaxing, and the phone rang. My husband never answers the phone, the same way today. We missed the call. And then they called back, and I'm like, who's calling us from Durham? It's like, oh my gosh, it's the hospital. So he answered, and they thought they might have a kidney for us. And so that was like the best 4th of July ever. And when that happens, you don't go right away. There's like a waiting period. There is someone who is, in this case, was transitioning, and but they called us to come on July 6th, and so we made the trip to the hospital. And we were so prepared from the last time that it might not work out. That we just didn't even have we were excited, but didn't have necessarily the final hope, because we were like, well, let's be calm, because last time it didn't work out in the end. Let's not get our hopes up. And so each stage, they were like, okay, so we're going to move you to the next room. We're like, okay. And so the last room, they're like, all right, so it's time to go back. And we're like, what do you mean it's time to go back? Like, we hadn't processed. It's really going to happen, yes. And so they took him back, and I remember his surgeon coming back early in the morning. So he got his transplant on July 7th, which was his mother's birthday. His mother had died years prior. So it was just like the best gift ever. And the way even the surgeon talked about him, and he described, he's like, the way that God made his body, and this is how we had to arrange things, and it was the best. It was just like a gift. It was something that we had waited on for so long to just live, and for us to have some normalcy, because our kids had grown up with this. Dad's always been on diet, not remembering a different way. So it was touch and go for, the short term. I think a lot of people also don't understand that transplant is major, and and in many cases, if there are, different complications and things. So it took us about 6 months to kind of get a good rhythm and medicines all balanced and things like that.
Medications, right?
Lots of different medications, and even
financial obstacles.
And to share that too, just briefly, a lot of people don't understand that when you only have one form of insurance, you aren't eligible for a transplant, because they know you won't be able to afford the medicine. And so there's a lot of pieces that have to come together for this to happen. So if you can prevent it, by all means.
Right.
Please keep your kidneys.
Keep your kidneys.
Prevent.
Yes.
Prevent.
That is,
Yes.
I mean, we just keep hammering that, because again, as people now get to hear this, it's not you just get a transplant, you get a kidney, oh, you're good. Again, this was Tim's second kidney, and we've talked about it around the circle here, about how it affects the family. And so as a wife, as a care partner, as and then having, when you just talked about Tim having a heart attack when you had a newborn, that stress that it puts on you, the stress that it puts on us as wives and care partners and as mothers and sisters, I think it's very important to remember that self-care for everyone, not just the patient, but we all need to make that time for self-care so that we don't become the patient.
That's right. That's right.
And really take care
I'm so
of
happy
of
that
ourselves.
she made mention of what happens, and 'cause when you hear transplant, you don't think about all the other extra. But one of my dear friends, around Christmas, her 48-year-old sister received a heart transplant, and so she just made a post, like, we're praying for my sister. but of course, we're also praying for the other family, right?
Yes.
Who had to endure that loss.
That loss.
Very true.
Right, and then as you stated, I know like my friend, I'm sure they don't mind me sharing some of it. They live in the Myrtle Beach, Conway area. They had to go to Charleston, right,
MUSC.
to MUSC, and she had to stay in the Charleston area for a while in case something happened with the transplant.
Yes.
That's right.
Right, so luckily when she shared that with me, my nonprofit supports not only children but families who endure challenges and obstacles. So I reached out to the FDNY in New York, which is one of my partners. They said, "Hey, we'll support some of that. So we'll pledge to support her stay in Charleston."
That's
You
a
know,
blessing.
so I had one of the firefighters that we worked with previously support that, and so just as you stated, awareness. Because if my friend never shared that, I would have never known. But you know, that's sometimes why we don't have the resources that we need,
Yeah.
because
Don't know.
we don't know.
We don't know, and so just to kind of give everyone an update too.
And then the NYPD, I thought about that too. I know it was national news about the 2 young men in Harlem that, I don't know if anyone remember it, the 2 young men in Harlem that went in for just a regular domestic dispute with the mother and son, and then the son unfortunately fatally wounded, he killed 2 New York City police officers a couple of months ago, maybe 2 months ago. And the youngest officer, he's about 21, he died that night, but the other was rushed to a hospital in Harlem area, and then they sent him to another hospital. So I'm like, wow, like he might make it. And then come to find out, they shared later that they was holding on to him because he was an organ donor, which I thought was so beautiful. He was only 20-something years old. And I think a kidney was one of the things, but I know his spleen. He gave a
so
lot of
many
his
people.
organs away to others. And I just thought that was very noble, in his,
Yeah, with you
know.
saying that, I think a lot of people don't know that you can sign up to be an organ donor. When you apply for it, like on your license, you put you want to be a living donor or organ donor. Sorry, excuse me. But yeah, that's something great, because if you pass away, you're able to give somebody else a life, like maybe 5, 10 other lives.
He helps like several people.
Exactly.
So I thought that was just noble.
Can I just
I was going to say,
share?
please share, because I know we have just a few minutes left, and I
just
wanted to
really
make sure
quickly.
you please share that information.
Absolutely. I'm part of the state team with Donate Life North Carolina, and there's a state team in every state in the U.S. And for us in Donate Life North Carolina, we inspire all North Carolinians to sign up on the organ donor registry, because you can save or enhance, depending on tissue and things of that nature, up to 75 lives. I mean, it's just amazing. And registerme.org, it only takes a few minutes of your time to go online or download the app or what have you, or go to Donate Life. There's Donate Life America. And just take a moment, because in those critical times, and also tell your family. Tell your family about your decision, so that when that time comes, they know that you've signed up to become an organ donor.
Yes.
And so it's so important. It's so important. It saves so many lives, or enhance so many lives.
It really does. And then there's also living donation.
Yes.
And so, Raymond was so blessed to have his brother donate a kidney to him that lasted for 5 years. It was, again, gave him 5 years of, freedom from dialysis, and really made a difference in the first few years of our son's life.
Yeah.
And so that living donation can make such a difference. And I know that I've heard from so many people that even going through the process, they would have friends or family members say, I want to donate, and even in their going to offer their kidney, would find out that they had kidney disease, or they had other underlying problems, the silence of diabetes and high blood pressure, or other things that would make them, ineligible to be a donor. And so I think it's just important that, again, we have that baseline, that we have an understanding of our health. Let's work to keep our kidneys Because again, the numbers are alarming.
They are.
And when we started with 1 in 9 in 2015, it was 26 million Americans, or 1 in 9 adults. 90% of them didn't know that they have kidney disease.
That's right.
That is still the case.
Yep.
Not the number of the 26 million, it's now 37 million. I've actually heard numbers much higher than that, but I haven't seen them publicized yet. And it's now 1 in 7 people that are impacted. And we're not going to go change the name because 1 in 9 was already unacceptable,
That's it,
right?
yeah,
Right.
And we are going to change the trajectory. We are going to reverse that. But in order to do that, we need to have conversations like this. In order to change the trajectory of kidney disease, we have to change the trajectory of diabetes. We have to change the trajectory of high blood pressure.
Yes.
We have to change the trajectory of obesity. We have to look at what can we do for our bodies. How can we be the healthiest? And I think that is one of the takeaways from COVID is, whoa, there was people that were impacted much more because of these underlying conditions.
Yes.
And the reason why I believe that number is much higher than the 37 million is also because of COVID. It is causing a lot of people to have an acute kidney injury.
That's right.
And have that damage. I spoke with actually someone just recently after one of our screenings and the screening at our church. And they went and got their numbers checked. And they came to me and said, I was really surprised because a year ago, my kidney function, my GFR, or glomerular filtration rate, which the target is 100. We want to keep it at 100 is the average. And she was coming to me and saying, she was at 100 last year, and it had dropped. She's now close to stage 3 kidney disease. And the only thing different, nothing else had changed in her health, but she did have COVID. And so she's going to go back and get some more testing. But again, if we need to do more to take care of our health. And I think just in closing, I think it's I think that it's appropriate that here the 4 of us that were at Bishop Jake's conference here in Charlotte for the International Leadership Summit, that in his closing remarks and what he was sharing was deliverance and disruption. And we all can be disruptive just by having, that deliverance of knowledge, right? And being able to take that knowledge. And we can be disruptive of the status quo, because the status quo is definitely not working. Let's shatter it. Let's turn these numbers around. And I'm going to share one of the quotes he said today that just really, really stuck with me. And that was, the more you hold on to what is normal, the more you let go of what is possible. And so I just am looking forward to seeing what's going to come from this discussion and others, because there's so many positive possibilities. I'm so grateful that each and every one of you took the time to come today to share your stories, to share your heart, and I know that you'll be able to take this, now that you've all met, you have more information to impart to others, to empower them. And so for those that are part of our viewing audience and have been listening to this marvelous discussion, if you've enjoyed this, please share this with others, and make sure to subscribe on our 1 in 9 YouTube channel as well. Thank you so much, and God bless.
We not giving up, we gon' win. We are warriors, champions. We not giving up, we gon'